Hey, everybody. Steve Miller, better known as Kelly's dad and marketing gunslinger. Thanks for joining me here on the IMTS Spark Network. Oh, wait, that's not right, because there's both a IMTS Network and there's also an IMTS Spark. So I better not combine those and confuse anybody. All right, IMTS Spark. We are back here again, and we're in one of my programs, which is called Your Competitive Edge program. And and when I do these programs, which many of you know that I do them monthly, usually during the year and stuff like that. But we've now incorporated them into the Spark program, and I've been able to find people who I think have really great information, interesting information that you would want to hear about. And a few months ago, it's been a few months, right, Len? First of all, I should say welcome, Len Herstein, to joining. I'm going to read a little bit about you here in just a minute, Len. But so bear with me. But thank you for joining us.
My pleasure,
Len. And a lot of these people that we have on here are old friends of mine who I just happen to be very, very fortunate to know a lot of people who are way smarter than me, and I'm able to con them into coming onto these programs with me, which is great, And many of you know that one of our guys who has been around quite for a while now is Shep Hyken, and Shep, is Mr. Customer Service. Actually, at my home, he's called Mr. Magic. And any of you, if you were exhibitors and you were at the exhibitor workshop where Shep came in and spoke to everybody, you know exactly what I'm talking about with the magic part. But Shep, kind of out of the blue, apparently he had spoken for Len, and like I say, we're going to we'll get to his background and how we got to this point very quickly. And afterwards, Shep sent an email to Len actually recommending me. Go figure, right? And so Len and I got connected, and boy, we just clicked just like that. We hit it off so well, and we had such a good time. And he interviewed me for his clients, and then afterwards, I had a chance to watch a video that Len had done himself for his own group, and I said, "Oh my gosh, I need you to come on to Spark." And so that's how I got him here. But let me introduce Len to you, and then I'll also kind of go over some housekeeping and stuff like that to make sure that we're all on the same page. All right. Here's how I met Len. Len is the founder and CEO of a company called Manage Camp Incorporated, which are producers of the annual Brand Manager Camp. So you might want to, I'm sorry, not Manager Camp. Let me make sure I get this right. Brand Manage Camp, and make sure you write that down. We're going to talk about that a little bit later on because he's got something for you. But if you can check him out at brandmanagecamp.com, which is a marketing conference, as you can imagine, which is now it just celebrated its 18th anniversary. You've done this for 18 years.
I know.
Yeah. Did you have hair when you first started?
I did. I'm not sure if it was the conference or my kids, but I lost the hair along the way.
Oh yeah, between those two, definitely going to do that. But prior, in this, I like this too. Prior to founding Manage Camp, Len spent many years innovating, managing, and growing brands for major, and I'm going to use CPG.
Consumer packaged goods, baby.
People on here have no idea what I'm talking about. It stands for Consumer Packaged Goods Marketers, including Campbell's Soup, Coca-Cola, and Nabisco. And prior to that, he actually worked for Anderson Consulting, which is now Accenture. But here's the unique part of Len for me, is that after something like 25 years of doing this stuff and having his brand Manage Camp and his company Manage Camp, Len was apparently lost and having a midlife crisis. And he was searching for a way to give back to his community. That's when a Facebook ad from his county's sheriff's office caught his eye, and he embarked on his journey to become a reserve deputy. He is a policeman. He's a cop. And that's a big part of this, because as those of you that have read my book, Uncopyable, you know that a huge part of learning, getting new ideas and being uncopyable is to expose yourself to aliens, to alien thinking, to get out of, not just get out of your box, but to go study other boxes that have nothing to do with you. And that's where you get new ideas. And so when Len and I first started talking to each other, I could tell, he was getting ideas from being a police officer that impacted his business. And that's what he was sharing, with this speech that he gave, this video that he gave, and that we're going to be talking about today, which is complacency. So I guess that's a big way of saying, hey, Len, welcome, man.
Thank you. I appreciate it, Steve. I'm very happy to be here.
Yeah, this is exciting. Nice book you got there in the background, by the way.
I did that just for you.
Make sure we point that out.
Uncopyable, right there.
If you don't have that book, be sure and go get it, you guys. All right. So all right. So part one here. Let's talk about your background. Okay. All right. Before becoming a cop. Okay. Yeah. You were in consumer, in the CPG world. You worked with Campbell's Soup and, like you say, Nabisco, Coca-Cola. Actually, a couple of my clients, past clients of mine. How did you get from there to just starting your own company?
Yeah. Well, yeah. So I started out in consulting. So out of school, I was in a consulting world. I used to work for Anderson Consulting, which is now Accenture. And I did a lot of different types of work, but it's mostly what I was involved in was change management, was helping people get from point A to point B as they were making changes. And I started doing a lot of work with manufacturers and specifically in companies that were also into marketing. Did a lot of work for Pepsi back in that time, and I remember doing work there. We were doing some conversions on a plant that they had in Holland, Michigan. And I remember being there and having to do like an overnight there because we had a big snow and the shift got snowed in, and we were all in the factory together. So I've been in factories. I've spent a lot of time in them with all the jobs that I worked in. But when I was working for Campbell Soup and Coca-Cola and Nabisco, I went to a lot of conferences. And so I went to a lot of events that I kind of walked away from thinking I could have gotten more out of it. And I just wasn't satisfied with them. And it was back in the day. I mean, you mentioned my hair. I'm old, so it was back in the day when we actually used travel agents and stuff within our organizations.
You don't know old yet. So just don't go there. All right.
Yeah. So I would be calling to get earlier flights home, and then I would come back to the next same conference the next year, and everybody that was complaining about it the last year was there again. And I realized, what, the bar is kind of low, and it's a cliche, but I was on a plane from a conference in 2002, 2003, and I was on this again shows my age. I was on a U.S. Air flight. Some people in the audience might not even know what U.S. Air is, but I was on it, and I wrote on the proverbial napkin, which was a real napkin, U.S. Air cocktail napkin, what the next conference I was going to go to had to be. It had to be a single track. It had to deliver actionable insights. It had to be more about learning than selling. There were a lot of different things that I felt like were happening at the time. And I got home and I was complaining to my wife about it, and she got tired of me complaining about it and told me to do something about it. And the only reason I've been married for 22 years is because I do what my wife tells me most of the time. And so I did it. And that's what I did. I started brand managed Campbell. I was still working for Campbell Soup at the time, did that for 3 years until it just became too much. And that's kind of how Managed Camp started.
And you broke away and became an entrepreneur. So
I did.
Yeah, went from a side hustle to the real deal. Hey, I should remind everybody that if you have a question for Len, just pop it in the Q&A, or I mean, if you want to put it in the chat, that's fine. I'm monitoring both of them, so I'll be watching those as we go through this. Of course, we are recording this, so if for any reason you either have to leave or you have somebody else that you'd like to see this program later on, we'll have it archived onto the on the IMTS Spark Air place. But so you started Brand Managed Camp, and clearly it's worked, because I know I don't want to say I know a lot of the people you've had speak at your conferences, but I know some of the people, and and these are great speakers. So clearly you've had, and the fact that it's been around now for 18 years, and this year you went virtual, or I should say,
this was our first
end
virtual,
of 2020. Yep.
Exactly.
The most recent one, you went virtual. What do you think is the reason for the success of Brand Managed Camp?
Yeah, and I think it depends on how you define success, right? We have been we have had longevity, and we've done fine. We're not the biggest conference in the world. I like to say we're like, the little conference most people have never heard of. But we have a really loyal following, and we have people who love it year after year. And so, I think the success there is, we were able to kind of figure out where the deficiencies were, what people's pain points were, and we were willing and able to fix them, is kind of what it came down to. What happened with a lot of events, back when it was a trend that started when I started Brand Managed Camp, was this idea that, we're going to be more about sponsorship. We're going to be a sponsorship based model versus, an attendee based model. And certain trade-offs come with that, right? So, sure. You lose some of the control of the content because you have to appease the sponsors. It becomes, a selling environment. Your attentions get split, right? And so we took the opposite approach. We said, we're going to be an attendee conference. Every decision we do is going to be for the attendee. We were going to be, very dedicated to flawless execution, which was, an issue and continues to be an issue. I think there's a lot of time and effort put into promotion and not enough into execution. And that's, for us, that's everything from the food and beverage that you eat. Like when you come to one of my conferences, you're not getting, bagels for breakfast. You know what I mean? If you want a bagel, we'll find you a bagel, but you're going to get a hot breakfast, and you're going to get a hot lunch, and you're going to get great, snacks, and you're going to get unlimited coffee, and, just the little things that make it go easy. Our audio visual is going to run flawlessly, and we're going to work really hard on that. Our speakers, one of the things we're known for is like being the most on-time conference, because that's a huge pain point for people. It's really annoying when speakers run over and schedules change. And so those little things, I think, have helped us build, and the fact that we are kind of a 360-degree view of brand marketing. We're not a B2B conference. We're not a B2C conference. We're not a profit or nonprofit conference. We're not, a content marketing conference. We are something that covers a broad range of topics without any overlap. That, the people who attend our conference are kind of big thinkers.
Well, and for those of us that are marketers, branders, or anything like that, I think that's important anyway. That you have a breadth of knowledge, and you look for ways to bring it back in, and that is a great segue. And all of this is very, to me, in my mind, complacency fits all of this that you're talking about. And we're going to, obviously we're going to get more very deep into the discussion of complacency. But at some point during all of this, you decided you needed something else, right? You were looking to give back to your community, and then the sign came from above that said be a cop.
Yeah. It's one of those things where, I didn't grow up wanting to be a cop. I didn't grow up not wanting to be a cop. I mean, I had friends and, family, or
just wasn't on your radar screen.
Well, it wasn't something that I was actively thinking about.
Right.
But I was actively looking for ways to give back. I've been very heavily involved in my family and my business. But I felt like a piece I was missing from my life was, philanthropy or, service to others, something that would make me feel good about myself. Right. and also allow me to make an impact on other people.
And so you saw this announcement ad, I don't know what it was, right? And you said, and you talked to your wife, and she gave you the thumbs up, and so you applied. How many people do you think applied? Do you know how many people?
You know what? I don't know how many people applied. There was so this was like in 2014, 2015. And the Facebook ad came out, and it was the first time they were running this reserve academy. So they were, putting it out for people. And I remember the first day was like we went to like an informational session, like just to learn about it and express your interest. And I would say there was probably like 120, 130 people there. Nearly all of them younger than me, a lot of them with previous law enforcement or military experience. And I remember walking out of there thinking to myself, there is no way they're going to choose me for this. Right. I remember talking to my wife afterwards. I'm like, I'm still interested. I still like what I heard. And I was super excited about it because, our sheriff's office everybody looks at reserves differently, and uses a reserve department differently. Our sheriff's office, actually, we get fully certified as peace officers, and then we go through a full field training, and then we actually, work patrol with everybody else solo. And so, it was, I don't think my wife knew that when I got into it. That's why she said yes. She wasn't clear on that part. But so I was interested, and I put in my application, which was super hard. Because it's much easier to fill out your life story when you're 21 than when you're 45, right?
Yeah, I got a kick out of that. You sent me the draft of your book.
Yeah.
And I've only had a chance to get through the I think it's the introduction so far. And you made the comment that it's because you had to come up with all of your addresses, just basically your whole past history, right? And fill that out, and then you made the comment that it's obviously much easier for a 25-year-old to do that than a 43-year-old to do that.
Yeah.
Of so many more things. How much study? I don't remember. Was it 310 hours of training or something like that?
Yeah. So there's two phases. So we had our academy, right? So full-time deputies go to a full-time academy. What was put on for us was a reserve academy, which was built around the fact that they knew we had other jobs, right? So it was a longer period of time over more months, but it was like 2 nights a week and then every other full Saturday. So I think the academy itself turned out to be 310 hours or something like that.
310 hours.
Yeah, but that was just the beginning. So once we graduated from that, if you want to do patrol out on the road solo, we then had to go through the same exact field training program as every other deputy. So that was 440 hours of riding with a field training officer, and getting evaluated every shift.
Right.
And then, graduating from the field training class to then be, a fully certified road deputy.
So, all right. So now, all right, here you are, a businessman. Has had many years of working and we'll say in the trenches of business, right?
Yeah.
And then as an entrepreneur, and then you have this, and it's not a shift so much because this is an addition, right? This is now you're kind of putting, adding this on top of what you got is this totally different experience, but before they are going to allow you to go into the field, by yourself, like you say, out there solo, they put you through very intensive training. Now, why do I want to make sure that we're covering all of that stuff? Well, it's because the title of the program is Complacency. Complacency Kills.
Yeah.
So if you have gone through so much training, then in our heads, the idea is that, well, where does complacency fit into all of this stuff? So let's talk about complacency. First, what do you define as complacency?
Yeah. So complacency to me is when overconfidence, self-satisfaction, smugness leads to an unawareness of potential dangers or threats. Okay. And that to me, in a nutshell, is what complacency is. It's becoming unaware of the threats that are around you because you've become overconfident. So in essence, overconfidence and self-smugness, self-satisfaction and complacency is bred from success. So that's kind of the irony of complacency.
Yeah.
The more successful you are, the more vulnerable you are to it.
The more danger there is to becoming complacent.
Absolutely.
Because once you become successful, you sort of think that the past equals the future.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you asked it, because from the very first day, you talked about how I started to see things that kind of fit over, right? And so from the very first day, one of the things that we're taught is this idea that complacency kills in police work, right? And we're showed videos, and we're shown, we go through case studies, and it's on signs, and it's something that we talk about a lot. And it became very clear to me right away that, complacency doesn't just kill in law enforcement. Complacency kills businesses. Complacency kills relationships, kills marriages, right? And, the interesting
you
thing
saw
is,
the correlation.
Yeah. Yeah. But the interesting is, you're sitting there in class and you're thinking to yourself, you watch these videos and you think to yourself, not me, that's never going to be me, because we're getting so much training, right? And then you get out on the road, and it's the same way, business people will look at Blockbuster or, Toys R Us or, taxis or whatever it is, and think that never going to happen to me. Those are obvious errors that happened, and we would never do that. But then you get out on the street and you start doing things, and you can see how it can quickly seep into even, the people who thought they were most vigilant.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. The idea of complacency, when I first watched your video, I mean, I've given it thought, right? And we've all heard the don't be complacent type of thing. But at the same time, you sort of feel like I'm good at what I do. It's worked for me so far. What is it that I have to be concerned about? With complacency. I like the where is it you made in here? You made a comment in here about that complacency is not in your book. Complacency is not just laziness, and that you become you have this thing, survivorship bias.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah. In my book, I talk a lot about heuristics, and the different types of bias that we can have. What exactly is survivorship bias?
Yeah. So survivorship bias for me is kind of at the core of what drives complacency. And in essence, so survivorship bias is this idea that you only look at things that make it past a certain qualifying point, right? Mm-hmm. And so, we've all seen the memes, right? They're like, I survived spankings, I survived lead paint, I survived, smoking, I survived toy guns, I survived, all these things, right? And they say, like or share if you did too, right? Well, the reality is, or seatbelt, the reality is, that if you didn't survive, you're not there to share, right? You're not there to like. So only the people who survived are there. And that's the survivorship bias. It leads to the thinking that because we survived, what we did worked, right? But tell that to anybody who died from not wearing a seatbelt, right? They're not here to talk about how they lived through not wearing seatbelts because they're not here, right? And so that's what survivorship bias does. In police work, what happens is, you've heard the saying, 99% of police work is routine or whatever, and 1% is sheer terror, right? And that's, for the most part, that's true. Most of the time things go right. We might do 1,000, 10,000 traffic stops, right? And when you're in the academy, you learn to address a traffic stop in a certain way. They're dangerous for us. Not only do we have traffic all around us, we don't know what's in that car. We don't know what's happening in that car. You're supposed to walk up on the car in a certain way. You're supposed to address and talk to the person in a certain way to maintain your safety, right? To maintain your officer safety. After you do that 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 times and nothing goes wrong, you can see how people will become a little more lax. They may lean on the window when they're talking to the person, or they may walk up, in full view of the side view mirror, or they may be taking their eyes off the driver, or they may not be looking at what's in the back seat. And that is because what they did up to that point, the 2, 3, 4, 5,000 times before that point, led them to a survivorship bias to say that those things are okay. And they are okay until they're not, right? And
Right.
the problem is when they're not, the consequences are big. And it's the same thing in business, and it's the same thing in life. You can get by doing a lot of things that are not necessarily the right thing to do or the not right way to do it. And you get by just fine. And you say, hey, I don't know what you're getting worried about. I have, done this a million times. I never lock my door. I leave my doors open in my car all the time, right? I've never had anybody break in,
Right.
until they do. And then that's a big problem for you, right? So that's what survivorship bias is.
Well, and like a great example, my smoking hot wife Kay's got a good friend of hers who never uses her turn signal.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Not to change lanes, not to turn right or turn left or anything like that. And I remember online, I saw the question was like, what's the number one reason why people don't use their turn signal? And the reason is because they feel it's inconvenient. And they don't want to take the time to do that. Okay. And so I assume that the survivorship bias, that the fact that they've lasted this long, right, adds to that. So if we're looking at a business, for example, because obviously we want to be able to, we're translating this whole thing over to how businesses should be looking, is that just because you've been around doesn't mean you can't be brought down.
Yeah.
Don't get cocky.
I think a great example of that is taxis versus Uber and Lyft, right? So I grew up in New York. And so, taxis are a way of life, right? And, at a point in time, the medallion. So for anybody who's not from New York, to operate a taxi cab in New York, you have to have a medallion that gets put on your hood, right? And that medallion is basically your license. And they were sold on an open market, and they would cost $1 million to buy a taxi in New York City.
To have the right to drive a taxi.
Right. And taxis, at a certain point in time, there were really two choices. If you were living or working in New York, beyond public transportation, if you wanted some sort of vehicle transport to come get you, or you either had a taxi or you had car service, right? And car service would be like a Lincoln Town car, right? And you would call them up on the phone. And you would have them come get you, and then you'd have to give them your credit card, which they would, put in their credit card thing and, whatever. And so those were your two choices, until, technology existed. Technology existed to be able to do all the things that Uber did with that transportation industry, but there was no impetus for change, right? There was no need. The taxis had their market. The limo transport cars had their market. And, I say in the book, like, you could get into a taxi and you could almost smell the vulnerability. At least I hope that's what that smell was, but you could smell the vulnerability. Right. And who would have thought, right? Who would have thought that their world would be turned upside down in such a big way, where people who, normal people became their competition.
Well,
right? With
who
Prius.
Would have thought it could have happened so easily?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's one of the it's where it comes to, like, I love the word complacency. I've always used the term. To fight it is healthy paranoia.
Yeah.
With my clients. Because it's like to say, look, don't get complacent, because somebody out there, if you are successful, somebody is trying to figure out a way to take your business away from you.
Well, and that's the whole thing. Yeah. And, I use a different word. I don't use, in the book, I talk about, to me, the opposite of complacency is not paranoia per se, it's vigilance, right? Because paranoia is based in fear, but vigilance is based in awareness. Mm-hmm. And I think that's really the key for me is how do you, and that's what the book is about, and the book is going to be out this summer. But the book is about, the 10 different things that we do every day in law enforcement that are built around helping us remain vigilant so that we don't get complacent. And I take those things and I translate them into the business world, into the personal world, to say, how do we do those things? And part of that is around being aware of your threats, right? And constantly, being in this state of awareness, not necessarily paranoia, because to people, paranoia sounds bad to them. They don't want to necessarily maybe be paranoid all the time. It's draining to be paranoid, right? And but it's also draining to be vigilant. But you have to be vigilant. To me, that's kind of the opposite of complacent.
Okay, so you say there are 10. You say examples or ways
there are 10 things that are built into the way we do our jobs. Okay,
and these lead to complacency.
No, these are what we do to help fight complacency.
Oh, okay, all right, even better. So can you share a couple of those?
Yeah. So I mean, one of them that I talk about is threat awareness, right? So that's right off the bat. I use the example from law enforcement, like, when I walk into a restaurant, right? I'm a difficult person for my family. Anybody who has a cop in their lives knows that it's not super fun to go to a restaurant with them because they're aware, right? We're looking at where are the exits, where are the entrances,
and where you sit and stuff like that.
Who's going to be walking behind me? Can I have my back to a wall? I don't want any windows behind me.
Yeah.
Who's working here? Who's eating here? Have I had experiences with them in the past that might lead to a difficult situation with my family there? Right. I'm continually not only looking and being aware, but also playing scenarios in my head. If this happens, what am I going to do? Now it becomes, after a while, I know all these scenarios. I don't have to play them over and over and over because I've already been through it. I know what's going to happen. If something happens, what my kids are going to do. My kids know what they're going to do, what my wife's going to do, what I'm going to do first and what I'm going to do second, and all those types of things. So it's about, one of the things that we work on a lot is kind of threat awareness, keeping a 360-degree view of threats. And so that's something that in business we need to do as well, right? We need to not only look at who our competitors are today, but who our competitors could be tomorrow. Did the home energy and solar panel, industry anticipate Tesla coming in and changing their world? Right. And these new threats can come from all different directions, all different places. And you need to maintain this kind of 360-degree awareness. Someone has to be responsible for it. And someone has to be responsible for communicating these threats and being aware of these threats well before they become something that's super dangerous for you.
I always remember when Bill Gates said that he once said many years ago, he used to say he say when he was still at Microsoft, and he would say, I am not worried about the threats I can see. He said, I'm worried about the threats I can't see. I'm worried about the guy in a garage somewhere, right? Yeah. Building something that is going to take me down. And over the years, when I consult for companies, there have been many situations where, when we're trying to develop a strategy or something, we will use the SWOT analysis that is very common, very popular over the years, and which is the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And so you figure out what are the internal strengths, what are the internal weaknesses, what are the external opportunities, and what are the external threats. And quite frankly, for several years, I always felt it was incomplete when I would do these SWOT analysis with companies. And then it hit me one day. And what I came up with was SWOT spelled SWOTT. And so now when I work with companies, and I take them through these SWOTs, I'm going to go through, get their strengths. We'll figure that out, figure out what their weaknesses are, figure out what the opportunities are, figure out what the typical threats are that companies have. And most of the time when they come up with threats, it's the obvious threats, right? It's the obvious stuff. And then I realized, okay, the other T is what I call the not so obvious threat. All right. And that threat is where you say, okay, somewhere there is somebody on the planet who wants to kill you. And I mean, from a business perspective, they want to kill your business.
Right.
And you don't know that. There is somebody, and they know everything about you. They've either worked for you or they have studied you so much. They know everything about you. And so the question is, what would they do to kill your business?
Right.
And see, and that's a different question. And to me, that and this is probably why, your complacency theory, and it's not a theory, it's true. It's just, is resonated so hard with me, was because it was like, oh, there we go. That's what's going on here, is that there's somebody out there who's hoping that you're complacent.
Yeah. Well, there's something I talk about in a book. I call it the Roadrunner Effect. If you remember the cartoon Roadrunner, right? You've got the Roadrunner and you've got Wile E. Coyote, right? Mm-hmm. And Wile E. Coyote gets so focused on what he thinks is his one enemy, his one competitor, that he loses sight of everything around him, right? And he loses sight of all the other dangers around him. And so that plays into, this idea of complacency in a couple of ways. It gets into kind of threat awareness, but it also gets into something else that I talk about. Another one of my chapters is called keeping both eyes open.
Okay.
Right. And so the idea of keeping both eyes open comes from me learning to shoot in the police academy. Okay. So I didn't come from a background where I did a lot of shooting prior. Growing up in New York, we didn't, I wasn't in rural New York. I was in city New York. So when I learned the way, and if you think about what typically happens, the way I try to explain it to people is like, if you pick up a camera, if you can imagine, an older camera, one that actually has a viewfinder on it that you would hold up to your eye, right? Mm-hmm. And you would hold that up to your eye, right? And you would put your eye up to it, and what you would do with your other eye is you would close it.
That's it. Right? Instinctively, you would close your eye.
Right. And you're doing that because you want to be laser focused on what you're looking at. But what you lose sight of is everything around you, right? And so when we learn how to shoot, we learn how to shoot with both of our eyes open, because I have to be aware not only of who I'm dealing with, but are there kids around? Are there other people around? What's behind them? Is there a restaurant with a glass window? Like what kind of environment I am? So I have to keep both eyes open, because there's a difference between, we use two different terms. One of them is a positive, one of them is a negative. We'll say people are laser focused, right? We use that as a positive, or we'll say they have tunnel vision, right? And we use that as a negative. They're both the same thing.
Yeah,
right?
Now that you say that, and I don't think I've ever thought of that before, but they're basically the same thing.
They're exactly the same thing. They're closing one eye so you can focus in on one specific thing. And we do it all the time. We do it when we look at our threats. We do it when we think of our competitors. We do it when we think of when we're doing things in the marketplace, and we have what we call unintended consequences.
Yeah, one of my favorite terms.
I mean, unintended consequences are just unconsidered consequences that happened. Right?
Yeah, that's for sure. Planning, I always say planning. It's so hard to plan for something because there's always unintended consequences. Always.
Right.
And you have to work as hard as possible to ask yourself, what could possibly go wrong?
Yeah.
What could possibly go wrong?
You got to keep.
And when we're looking at, we think in terms of competitors, and I love the idea of that. So like if we're looking through one eye, we are looking at competitors we can see, as Gates was saying. That's what we're looking at, or who we're looking at, because they're right in front of us. We can see them, and we can see how they're behaving. We can see how they're acting. We can see how they're responding to us. I mean, a complaint that I hear a lot, and I'm sure the people who are watching this right now can relate to this, and I hear this from business people in all industries, is they go, we come up with a new idea, and doggone it, if our competition doesn't just copy it, and then we don't have any advantage anymore. Right. And I say, well, number one, the first thing to always remember is, if it can be copied, it will be copied.
Yep.
Okay. Now, your competition, who is in this laser beam, this tunnel vision, your competition is right in front of you, and you are right in front of them. They are studying you. Mm-hmm. And if you come up with an idea that they can steal and copy, that's what they're going to do. But the fact is that you do the same thing. Okay.
Yes.
Most people do the same thing. What we need to try to think about is what's over here.
Yeah.
That we're not looking at. Because we don't know what's over there, right? So we always have to think in terms of what might happen, and the only way to have that perspective, to have that part of you, is to be vigilant.
Yes.
Right? You have to be vigilant. You have to be very proactive about ears open, eyes open, all this stuff. How could somebody take us down?
Yeah. Well, and there's a flip side of that too, which is, something else I talk about, this idea of getting off the X. Okay. And so what you're talking about is how do we keep vision of everybody, which is absolutely piece of it. Right. And then the other piece of it is how do we not become so easy to be kept in the vision? Right.
How to stop being an easy target.
Exactly. Yeah. And so I talk about this thing. It's called the Ooda Loop. Have you ever heard of the Ooda Loop?
Oh man, I'm so glad you brought that up, because I had that down here to talk about the Ooda Loop.
Yes.
Let's talk about the Ooda Loop. This is one of my. I just love the term.
Well, so the Ooda Loop, for people who aren't familiar with it, it's OODA.
Yeah.
Okay. And it's an acronym. It stands for Observe, Orient, Decide, and Act. Okay. It comes from Colonel John Boyd from the U.S. Air Force. He was a Korean war pilot, and then was in the military for a long time afterwards. And it was built as a way to understand the decision making so that they could better win dogfights.
Dogfights. Yeah. I remember studying that, and I don't know if it was a book that he wrote or something. I mean, years ago, and I just got absolutely enamored with this idea of the Ooda Loop.
Yeah, but it's a fun thing to say. It's a fun thing to say, but it's also it's really cool because you can look at the Ooda Loop in two ways, right? So you can look at it in terms of how do I speed my Ooda Loop up? How do I get quicker to the act phase, right? Or we can look at it in terms of how do we disrupt our competitor's Ooda Loop? Because an Ooda Loop thing, once you're in it, if something happens, right?
It just keeps going around. Say what it stands for again.
OODA is observe, orient, decide, and act. So an example I like to use is this. So I think about football, right? I don't care if it's American football or English football or whatever football, but you're playing football, right? And someone has the ball and they're trying to get to an end zone or a goal or something, and you're across the field. Okay. Mm-hmm. If they run straight down the field, you will quickly observe what they're doing. You'll be able to orient yourself. Your mind will do the math very quickly. You'll decide where you need to be to intercept them, and you will go and you will act and you'll intercept them. Mm-hmm. And you'll most likely be successful. Right. Now take a second scenario where that same person's going down the field and they don't go in a straight line. They juke and they move and they're left and they're right and they stutter step, right? Every time you've observed, you've oriented, you've decided, and now you've got to observe and orient and decide again because now they're going somewhere else and they're moving a different way. And it disrupts your OODA loop. And so an OODA loop is something to win, right? So it's a win-lose scenario. You win by either speeding your OODA loop up or slowing your competitor down.
And the way you slow them and disrupting theirs up. And I love the word juke, by the way, too, because when I heard you say that in your video, because that's an old football term, right? Yes. That when you're running down the field, you're trying to juke, juke by the guy, the tackler is trying to, you juke the tackler, Yeah. So I haven't heard that word.
The idea is to be strategically unpredictable, right? And that's how it relates. That's how it relates back to business. You have to be strategically unpredictable. You can't be, what I call standing on the X. So again, getting back to learning how to shoot in police academy, we're told to get off the X. Whenever you're doing something, you move, right? Because every time I move and I get off my X and move side to side or wherever I do, I force whoever I'm in a fight with to reconsider what they're doing, right? Mm-hmm. And it slows them down. And so we're getting off the X. And it's the same thing in business. The more predictable you are, the more likely you are to succumb to complacency. And so it's not about being crazy or stupid. It's about being strategically unpredictable. If there's people in the audience who are poker players, anybody who's a poker player knows that you don't play pocket aces the same way every time. Because if all you do is go all in with pocket aces every time, then your opponent knows every time you do that, you have pocket aces. And every time you don't, you don't. Right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And also, players, good players learn how to hide their tells, because that makes you predictable. And I love it. So like, if we look at something like an obvious example, Blockbuster. Okay. Blockbuster is an obvious example of standing on the X.
Yes.
Right. And they could not see that there was going to be a different alternative. So when they were when Netflix came to them and offered to sell themselves for, I think it was $50 million.
Something right? Really low. Yep.
Yeah, it was Blockbuster just goes, we don't need you. Right. And so they were standing on the X, and Netflix just says, okay, fine, we'll just keep doing what we're doing. And, and they are down. I understand there still is one Blockbuster store somewhere. I'm not sure where.
Is there really?
I've heard that there is one Blockbuster store. I almost feel like I should go find it and go.
It might be, maybe they put like an umla over the U and it's like Blockbuster or something.
Well, you know what? Let's see if we figure out a way, instead of an umla, do it the other way. We'll call it an Ooda.
Oh, there you go. There we go. But you know what? So that's a great example. I think, another example is, especially in business. So if we're talking about, people in the audience, you can actually stand on the X and train your customers in the wrong way. Right. So if you think about this, like I'm actually wearing it right now, Eddie Bauer, right? we were talking about,
that's what you do. I mean, I assume that you're being compensated, for every time you say Eddie Bauer.
You know what? I hate shopping. And so I find something that fits and I buy like 6 colors of it. And that's where I go with. But so Eddie Bauer, I'm a customer of theirs. Somewhere along the line, they went down this path where I was receiving emails all the time, and it would be sale after sale after sale after sale after sale, going up to sales of 60% off. And I knew eventually it was going to get to 60% off. So why would I ever buy anything for less than 60% off? Right? I just wouldn't ever do it, because I'm going to feel bad about myself if I do that. And then I know it's coming, and I know the time frames it's coming. Not only do I know when it's coming, all their other customers know when it's coming, and all their competitors know when it's coming.
Right.
And that's standing firmly on the X. But we can justify it in business, right? We can figure out like, well, gosh, we have to do that sale now because we did it last year, and we've got to make the numbers, right? And we've got to, if we don't do that sale now, we're not going to hit our numbers, and then our manufacturing is going to be messed up because they're producing towards those numbers, right? And you can figure out a whole line of reasons as to why you should stand on the X.
But then you become predictable. And as soon as you become predictable, you are opening it up for competitors to take advantage of you. To zig when you zig, they zag, or something like that. I think that the idea of being strategically unpredictable is very, very important. And I want to remind those of you that are on here that if you have a question, even a comment about what we're talking about, stick it in either the chat or the Q&A, or just stick it in the chat. What the heck? Let's just stick with that place. And tell me what you're thinking about this, because I'm going to push Len for at least one, maybe two more examples of what he's talking about. If you are an entrepreneur like you, all right, with a business that's been around for a while, how do you is there one of those examples in particular that you haven't talked about yet that you yourself pay more attention to?
Yeah, well, I tell you, one of the things that I think applies to everybody, it certainly applies to me, that I learned from law enforcement, is the concept of briefing and debriefing. Okay. I'm going to specifically talk about debriefing because it's
Okay.
something that I wasn't doing and we do now in my business. Because if people debrief today in their business, in their office, in their plant, whatever they're doing, I can almost guarantee you that you're only debriefing when something goes wrong. Okay. And you're using it as a way to either place blame or to shift blame or to whatever. And so those debriefs are not really debriefs. They're more about like, let's get to the base of what happened here so that we can avoid doing it again.
Yeah,
right?
get to the crux of the problem there, right?
Right. What I learned from law enforcement is we do debriefs on important missions or important things that happen, whether they went right or wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And we do them right away. And we do them when they're fresh, right? And we do it in a way where we leave titles and ranks at the door and everybody gets a say. And we go through the things that went wrong. We go through the things that went right, but by accident, right? And we go through the things that went right and we can do better still,
Mm-hmm.
right? And we talk about all those things. And that to me is a big difference between complacency and vigilance, because it gets back to the survivorship bias. When things are going well, we tend not to think about why they're going well, or if they went well by mistake, or if they could have been going better, right? We don't mess with what's working. We don't fix what ain't broken, right?
That's
and
right.
So we move forward. And this kind of really hit home. There was one time, I was on duty. It was a day shift. I usually do swing shift, which is like 2 to midnight at night.
Oh, that's an ugly shift.
You know what? It's better than Graves. It's better than Graves. But day shift, is daylight hours, right? And we have a lot of in progress calls, but it's also a lot of what I would call cold calls, like someone wakes up and they realize something's missing from their car or their apartment or something like that, or whatever. There's a lot of cold calls. We don't get a lot of shots fired calls during the day.
Okay.
Criminals tend to be more active at night, but we got one, right? So we had this shots fired call. Everybody runs to it. We get our perimeter set up. We do all our things. It comes to a satisfactory conclusion is what. I won't get into the details. You can read, in the book, it's all in there. But we were all safe. No innocent people got hurt, and it ends, right? And you would think we just brought basically everybody into this call. As soon as it ends, the supervisors want to get everybody back out to the road, right? Get them back out and start working again. But instead, what happened was it ended, and we all got called back into the office to have our debrief, right? And this is in a scenario where everything went right.
Mm-hmm.
What we found is there were things that we didn't do that we could have done. There were things in how we set up our perimeter that people on the perimeter saw. Hey, we had a hole here. Nobody noticed this. We didn't do this. We could have used more people over here. Next time we should, and we went through it all, right? And we went through it all. And then we went back and we shared that with the other shifts, right? We
Mm-hmm.
wrote it up and we shared it, right? And so that's something that I take away that helps me become more vigilant in my business, because a lot of times things are going right. And if you don't look at where these points are, where you can debrief and you do it, what happens is you slowly but surely get complacent until
Mm-hmm.
somebody finds those vulnerabilities that you didn't find on your own, and they exploit them.
Yeah. And that happens so easily.
Mm-hmm.
It's like almost every single I mean, you can use it. I'm thinking about that, when I used to be a skier, okay. I mean, I had to get my knee replaced and everything like that. So I'm no longer a skier. I do snowshoeing and cross country and stuff like that. Alpine, but I don't mean alpine. But anyway, but when I was a skier, I would have a day and I would have a day where, man, I'm just going along and every run is fantastic and it's just so great. And then it's getting late in the day and you're thinking, oh, 1 or 2 more runs or something like that. And you get complacent because you've had a good day and you've been, and you're doing this, so, and then all of a sudden, boom, you hit a mogul, you do something wrong, and next thing you know, you're being carried down the mountain by the ski patrol. And remember after the first time that happened to me, I still remember a friend of mine who was a really, really, really good skier, who said to me, he said, when you're having a great day on the slopes, he said, and it's getting towards the end of the day, you have to ramp up your radar, and pay attention and really try to be much more aware of what's going on around you, because that's when you get lazy.
Right.
And you think that everything's going to go fine. While in skiing, one wrong move, and you can blow your knee out. You can, break something easily, or worse.
But here's the thing. So I 100% agree with you, like 100%. The problem I think most people have is it's easy to say, don't be complacent. This is the time to not be complacent, right? But it's hard to do, right? And that's why you have to build in these things. So specifically on a skiing example, right? So I talk in the book about habits versus routines, and the value of habits. So the way I define it, a habit allows you to remove thought from the system, right? A routine builds thought in. So you have to look for those situations in your life, in your business, on the factory or the manufacturing floor, where you want to inhibit thought versus promote thought. Okay. Now, so I'll give you an example from law enforcement real quick, and I'll give you an example of how it relates back to skiing. Okay. Mm-hmm. So in law enforcement, one of the things that I don't do is I don't shake hands. Okay. It's not because I'm a germaphobe, and I know there's COVID and all that stuff out there. It was pre-COVID, but I don't shake hands because I shake hands with my right hand. I'm a righty. My gun's on my right. Okay. And when I give someone my hand, I'm giving up control for a moment, right? And I'm putting myself really close to somebody and putting myself at risk. Mm-hmm. Now, what some people might say is, well, you can decide sometimes, I always fist bump, and I tell people, hey, sorry, I don't, it's nothing personal. I don't shake hands, and nobody ever has a problem with it, especially now. But I fist bump, right? And people might say, well, sometimes you could shake hands, if it looks friendly, and sometimes you could fist bump. But here's what I'm saying is, if you think about it every time, if you force yourself to think about it every time, you have
to think about it.
But if you do have to think about it, then you're going to make the wrong decision eventually, right? Someone is going to look safe. Someone is going to look like they're not a problem, and they're going to turn out to be one. So that's a situation where I use a habit of, I don't think about it. It's not a choice for me. I just never shake hands, right? And that way I don't make a mistake in a situation where it could be really, really hurtful. Let's relate it back to skiing, wearing a helmet, right? You might decide, you know what? It's a sunny day out. It's really warm out today. It's going to be an easy day out on the slopes. I'm not going to ski that hard today. I'm going to ski pretty light. I'm with my friend here who's only skis greens, and I'm going to ski. I don't need my helmet today. But the next day I'm going out on blacks. I'm going to do triple black diamonds, moguls all day. I need my helmet then, right? Well, that's when you're making decisions based on false information. Right? Because it has really nothing to do. If you fall, someone skis past you and slams into you while you're on the green slope or whatever you're doing, and you fall and you hit your head, whether you hit your head on the bunny slope or you hit your head on the mogul slope, you can do the same amount of damage, right? And so, habits remove that thought. They remove the ability for you to think based on, when we walk up to houses, we're not supposed to, we knock on a door. We're not supposed to stand in front of the door because we don't know who's behind that door.
Right.
But you can convince yourself there's a nice car in the driveway. It's just a call about a simple theft. We've never had a problem here before. I can stand here in front of this door.
Right.
But, so you can see where removing thought when you're on the factory floor, right? There are things that you don't want people thinking about. When should I be safe? When should I not be safe? Right? When should I wear my hard hat? When should I not wear my hard hat? When should I do? There are certain things that you should do every time, every scenario, and those become habits. But there are certain situations where you want people thinking, right? You want people bringing in new stimuli, and that's when you create routines.
Yeah. Well, we're getting out of time here, so I got to cut us off. Doggone it! I mean, as you can tell, I am really on board with this concept. And here's something. Oh, thank you, Gary. Gary we just had a really nice comment saying, great presentation, gentlemen, very informative and lots of great information, examples, insights, especially the threats we cannot see and survivor bias. Thanks. I want to make sure that I post in here in the chat to everybody that it's brandmanagecamp.com. It didn't do that. See, it separated the words there. Okay, so now I'm encouraging everybody to go there. Your book isn't going to be out for a while, which is okay. But I'm encouraging people to go there, and you said that you're gonna give them a discount if they actually want to sign up for the next Brand Manage Camp, that you'll give them a discount. And what'd you say it was? 90%? No, I'm kidding.
I will give them I would. What I'd love to do is I'd love to be able to give them a book, but the book's not out for a while. So we've got the Brand Manage Camp conference. If you're interested in marketing and brand marketing, you can come, and if you use the code, once we get it up and running, we don't have the new one. The next conference is going to be May 18th through 20th. If you use the code IMTS Spark, so 2 S's in the middle, IMTS Spark, we'll give you a 20% discount off the conference.
So just one word, IMTS Spark.
IMTS Spark, one word.
Okay. But here, okay, I'm gonna put you on the. I really am gonna put you on the spot here.
Uh-oh.
All right. Would you give me permission? See, I just put my email address on there, and and tell me again what your email address is.
My email address is Len, L-E-N, at managecamp, managecamp.com. Okay. So if they have questions for you, yeah, they can absolutely reach out.
Then they can reach out to you. All right. I put in brandmanagecamp.com. I put my email in. I put the code in, and I put your email in. And now I am completely out of line asking this. And I freely admit that I'm doing this. Would you give me permission to share your video with?
So here's what I want to do. I want to hedge it, because that video that I shared with you was kind of like an early iteration of what I'm doing. I really don't want that one out there, because it's changing, and I've used different things. But I will. We will do one, and we'll get people access to it when. So
what I want them to do is I want them to either reach out to. I would say reach out to me on that. All right. That if you would like for me to stay in touch with you and share any future video that Len does, let me know that. That way I can compile this stuff and
they can reach out to me directly too, or copy me or whatever.
Yeah. Of course they can. Of course they can. But we are way past time, which is too bad, because I'm really having fun with this. And I actually kind of
do it again. Part 2
on the spot there, but that's all right. So anyway, so Len Herstein, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
For joining me today and joining us. This has really been a lot of fun. Had a great time, especially the fact that we've had 1 hour of promotion of my book in the background there.
There it is.
Go get it, gang. And I'll tell you what, as soon as Len's book comes out, I'm going to be pushing that one pretty darn hard. So, Len, any last words?
Listen, I'm so grateful for this opportunity, Steve. I'm so I had a lot of fun talking with you, and I look forward to doing more stuff in the future. I think for everybody out there, feel free to reach out to me directly with any questions or any stories that you have that you think fit into the complacency thing, or if you're interested in seeing that video. And until the next time we interact, I just want everybody to be safe, be happy, be healthy, and be vigilant.
That's right. Stay healthy. Be vigilant about this. Don't get complacent about the coronavirus. Okay. Yep. That's a really good thing to think about. So, all right. So this is Steve Miller, better known as Kelly's dad and marketing gunslinger. Thank you again for joining us on another Your Competitive Edge program for IMTS Spark. And I'll be back again, in a couple of weeks with another program. I don't know what it is. It'll go look for it.
I'll be watching.
Okay. Thank you again, Len. See you, everybody. Bye.
Bye, everybody.